Hey there fellow creators, Ben here from Snipit Studios, and welcome back to another color theory video. Today we're talking about color biases, what they are, why should you care, and how to make better colors. Stick around. So when you look at a color wheel, not all of these colors are necessarily created equally, so to speak. Some colors, actually most colors, come to think of it, I think all colors, have some sort of a bias from one direction to the other on the color wheel. So you're like, hey, I'm going to get a nice pure red. Well, there's actually no such thing as really a pure red. It's going to lean maybe a little bit more orange or a little more to the violet side. It really just depends on which red and which pigment you're picking up. In order to mix a nice wide range of colors, sometimes it's better to actually have what they call a limited palette, which would be like a cool blue and a warm blue, and then a cool red and a warm red, and then a cool yellow and a warm yellow. Now I don't necessarily have all of both of those, but I have an interesting variety of them in a few different color lines. Now one of the big factors in just starting to understand color bias is just learning to see that difference. Now provided you don't have some range of color blindness, in which case that might be an issue for you, you should be able to actually kind of see a little bit in which direction different colors lean. The easiest way to do this is check your primary colors that you have on your painting tube. So your blues, your reds, and your yellows, and check them to just sort of base sample cards of secondary colors and see kind of which direction they're sort of leaning. You're like, okay, this actually looks like it could be a little bit more orange. And it's like, hey, that's a warm biased red. But simply seeing your color biases is really only half the battle here. Color bias actually has a pretty big factor on how you're mixing, and specifically your opposite colors. So back when I did this color wheel, I had sort of three base colors. I wanted to try and get them as pure as I could. My cadmium red leans actually a little bit orange. My cadmium yellow leans also a little bit orange. And the blue, which is a cobalt blue, is fairly pure. It does lean a little bit into the violet side, but it's pretty much as close as I was going to get to a pure blue. But I didn't think about my other two color biases when I was working on this. So when I came to create sort of my violet, so I have my red that leans on the orange side, and the blue that's more pure, blue and orange being opposite colors, dulled out that violet, simply because this bias and this opposite caused that sort of chroma to kind of get a little bit muddy. That's why my violet isn't quite as vibrant. Same thing with my green. My green's a little bit muddy. So green, yellow, and blue. The blue that does actually sort of lean a little bit towards the violet. The yellow, which is warmer, leans this way, and because we're kind of really working on that opposite spectrum here, the green is also duller. Okay, so I know explaining that is limited, so of course we got to get down onto a palette and actually sort of play with some of these colors. So I've laid down essentially what you'd expect out of a limited palette. I have some Cad Red medium, Cad Yellow medium, they're my go-tos. I have a little bit of this open benzimidazolone light, which is a lot more of a cool yellow, as well as some Hansa Yellow medium, which is also a cool yellow, but it does lean a little bit warmer than that one does. I've got some Phthalo Blue green shade, as the name suggests, it's going to lean greener. My Prussian Blue hue, which leans a lot warmer. And then some alizarin crimson, which I don't know if I've already said or not, but that leans a little bit more on the cool side. So this is what you get out of a limited palette. Just these colors and then probably white. And that's all an artist would use to get a much wider range of color. So let's go ahead and, like mix an orange, for example. Both of these lean orange. So you're going to get an orange that's actually really very sort of bright and vibrant. The red's a little more potent than the yellow, so I just immediately forgot about that because I'm an idiot. But you get a nice, bright, beautiful orange out of that. That's why I actually have these two colors, is to be able to get a nice solid orange for sunsets and sunrises and things like that. Also, fire elemental magic when I'm doing that kind of stuff. Now, when you mix, for example, the cooler yellow with the red, you're not going to get quite the same mix. You're going to get an orange that's almost a little bit more dull. It's still really red, isn't it? And because that's a lighter, cooler yellow, that orange, well, also more transparent because this is a thinner paint. Similar, sure. I'm picking a lot more of the white paper up underneath, but the mass tone of that color is a little bit almost washed out. It looks like you put some white into that paint. It's not quite as vibrant. And this is a very subtle difference between these two. But on a painting, it can actually make a pretty big difference sometimes. So let's go to our greens, for example here. So I actually got rid of my phthalo blue for a long time. I picked it up in actually some of the open paint, just mostly for skies because it makes a fantastic color for like a clear blue sky or even a cloudy blue sky. So I love using it for that. And one thing I forgot about it is that it does make really good greens. So whether that be the cad yellow to make a nice sort of bright springy green, or in this case the benzimidazoline yellow, which both being a cooler color that are more compatible, makes that green super vibrant, super springy, much higher chroma here than here. So if you're looking for that brighter green, you got to think about the compatibility of those colors. And the Hansa yellow is, of course, very similar, but it's leans a little bit warmer, keeps it a little more toned down. I feel I call this storybook green when I'm making it, because that's the only place you ever see it in like storybooks for kids, and maybe a box of crayons. Now the warmer blue, a lot of my blues are warm blues, so it's actually for me really valuable to have added the phthalo blue back to my palette, because I tend to struggle sometimes getting good mixes with the warmer blues, specifically with a cool yellow. Maybe that is more compatible, but you have a darker blue that doesn't quite get you there to a green. It's good for grass. Oh, that's the other one. Well, I messed that up, right. And this gets me more of a sap green. So the cooler yellows with the warmer blue does tend to work really well. It's a good compatible mix. Now the warmer yellow with that blue doesn't even really make green. It makes a very dull green. But having both ranges for each of those mixes gets you a really nice variety. You can go all the way to storybook green, or you can get sort of this duller green here, which is really good for like undertones, specifically with grass and foliage. Alright, now we have our reds. So these two are right next to each other. They're both cool. The Elizabeth Crimson's darker. It's not going to get maybe as vibrant of a purple that you really want, but it's going to be pretty close. Yeah, it's a little bit dark because both of these are relatively dark colors. But that's a fairly solid violet. It's leaning a little more red. The phthalo blue, though, with that, you're not really going to be able to get it. It's either going to be too blue or too what is it? Too red. Not be able to get that vibrancy out of that. Now we have, yeah, that was the phthalo. Was it the phthalo? Actually, I don't even know now. Yeah, I think so. Right. So neither one of those actually is super great. Cadmium, on the other hand, that's why I like cadmium red. It can do a lot of stuff. Cadmium and Prussian creates almost like a chromatic gray. You don't even really get a violet out of that, it's just like a black almost. Really dulled out that tone. Now our cadmium in the phthalo blue kind of similar, I guess, maybe? Something like that. Personally, I find that violets are relatively difficult to mix in general. unless you have a certain specific color. Yeah, this one isn't even that good either. So the best one I could really get out of that was actually the Cerulean Crimson, excuse me. Not Cerulean Crimson, that doesn't make any sense. Alizarin Crimson. That was really our best mix. But as I mentioned before, violets tend to be harder to mix in general, which is why I usually like getting a color like a quinacridone, like a quin violet, or even my old go-to, the quinacridone magenta, which if you want to replace one of your reds, you can totally do it with this. Because this, when you add blue to it, and honestly any blue, I'm actually going to mix the two, that's the violet you're probably thinking of. And when you add yellow to it, and honestly again any yellow, you're going to get a nice red-orange. That's my bridge color. When I'm not looking for these muddier purple mixes or the muddy other mixes, I'll use the quinacridone magenta or a quin violet to get those two good secondary extremes. So whether you knew it or not, color biases do exist. And before you pick up your next painting and start on that, you might want to actually have a look at exactly which tubes you're picking up so your colors don't get either too muddy or too vibrant depending on what you're going for. If you're struggling to get a good color mix, it might be as simple as just picking up a different blue or red or yellow or whatever color you're using. Sometimes just picking up a different biased color can actually really transform your mixes. As always, if you learned anything in this, go ahead and hit that like button. Get subscribed if you're not already. Consider supporting on Patreon. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that fun stuff. Everything's available in the description box below. And this has been from Cinderblock Studios, and I'll see you guys next time.